And good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With you, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Eric Eager from PFF.com. Fancy brick background. Nice to not be in the spooky 1970s bedroom. That's an upgrade. Soren Petro with you from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Catch my work at 810WHB.com, and a lot to get to guys today as we launch training camp. Right, that's what we've got going on. A little training camp, a little tackle showing up, a defensive end looking like he's playing for a contract. It's amazing what all's going on. We're going to talk about Orlando Brown being back in camp. Carlos Dunlap is now a Kansas City Chief since last we left you. That's news that happened. Skyy Moore playing well, but injured again, as he was injured in mini camps, although they're saying maybe not too much to worry about. We'll talk about that. Frank Clark looks quicker, according to many. Travis Kelce gets a $3 million raise. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is running with the ones. I don't know if we get 200 sleeper players, maybe some of the threats in the AFC, but Orlando Brown is back. Jeff Chadiha, let's start right there. What does it mean to you that Orlando Brown is in camp?
Well, first, I'm excited that we have sober Eric back on this show. You know, last week it was.
How do you know I'm sober, Jeff?
Full disclosure, I am on vacation and I may have had a couple of Coronas at dinner. You know, I mean, it's who knows? Like,
by the way, Soren, I gotta. Hey, look, this is me trying to hawk down some sponsorships. In Wisconsin, I do have access to CBD American Shaman, and I will have a drink of one if I need to loosen it up a little bit. But yes, Jeff I was going to say, how do you know I'm sober? It was a pretty big difference between me normally and what I was last week. That, by the way, was the first time I had a drink in 90 days. So it was like 2 drinks, and I was pretty messed up. So, but we start a new streak here.
That's right. We get a Coors Light sponsor for this. We're going to be all set.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, to answer your question, it means that. Well, first of all, it's good news. You know that he's come to his senses. This had the potential of being prolonged, of him making a very serious point about his bitterness. And look, he came in, said all the right things, talked about wanting to be a Chief for a long time, his entire career, wanting to block for Patrick Mahomes, wanting to make sure he took Andy's, padded practices very seriously as far as what they can get out of this week. And so I was impressed by how he handled himself. You never know how guys are going to show up when they did not get the contracts they wanted to get, but I think that he seems to be in good shape. He seems to be in good spirits. And when you have your whole offensive line intact, 6 days in the camp now, that's a pretty good thing for the Chiefs. We can't hear you, Soren.
Is Soren on? There he is.
Full disclosure: when I'm at home, I have multiple computers and screens trying to do some of the technical side. I was like, let me mute this so I don't all of a sudden start playing other things. I agree was what I said with Jeff. So now that I can unmute on my one screen I have to work with here, Eric, your thoughts? What does it mean that Orlando Brown is back in the mix?
Yeah, it means it. I think what it does is it does show that Orlando Brown's heart's in the right place. Like, he wants to play football with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think it also, a lot of the doomsday scenarios of hey, if they can't pay him top left tackle money, this thing's gonna go pear-shaped quickly. I think all of that was a little bit overblown, like we had said. Now, I actually thought he was going to hold out longer. I think it's a really good credit to him that he comes in and starts to play, because it's very clear. I think that there are questions given his actions. Does football mean all that much to him? Right? Because, I want to be a left tackle. I want to be the highest paid player in football. Why don't you just want to be a good football player? But I think what this has done has shown that maybe he just was getting bad counsel, right? He was just getting bad. Somebody was saying, "Oh, you don't need an agent." That was stupid. Or the agent that he got negotiated, and it was a bad and ill-sought negotiation. all of that is to say, like, it's very encouraging for the Chiefs, right? It's very encouraging that they don't have to go to any of these secondary options, even if they did exist. And, I think arrow points up in Kansas City as a result.
To me, and I heard that maybe there was some teammate persuasion going on here. There were guys reaching out to him saying, hey, we're going through new things. It's time to get in. That's great. I heard specifically Patrick Mahomes was reaching out saying, listen, now's the time to go. And as we know, Eric, very big in the offseason for Orlando Brown was to be there for Patrick Mahomes' wedding. I think if this information is true, it looks like he wants to be there for Patrick Mahomes' season as well. So that's good news, right? We consider this good news. Listen, I don't care who reached out to him. I don't care if it was all the agent or none of the agent. Orlando Brown needed to be in to get ready for the season. And he's in. And I don't care how he got there. I don't care if somebody physically put a forklift under his ass and drove him there. He's there. And he's there in time to get in football shape. And I think this is pretty early. Like, I wasn't even worried about it until they got back to Kansas City and he wasn't in. I figure you need 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. I figure Orlando Brown knows how much time he really needs to get in there. The early reports are that, belly size is pretty acceptable, that he's not coming in grossly overweight. So he took the offseason of getting in shape, all the things that Jamal Brown was telling us that it was important for him to get in shape. He took that seriously. He's in good conditioning, right? Football shape. You guys know better than me. You played football long after I did. It's not the same as just, having a six-pack or, being able to lift some weights. It's the muscles that it takes to push and pull and do everything into it. That you can only do that by playing football. He's got plenty of time to get into football shape. He's got plenty of time, seemingly, I would think, unless one of you guys disagrees, to learn any new parts of the offense, any nuances that are there. I think this has to be celebrated as a positive. Listen, I'm all for jumping somebody's ass when they do something stupid or say something stupid, but the man is in just really a handful of days afterwards. When they put on the pads, he's going to miss a little bit of the pad work, but for the most part, he's in for all the pads. I don't know how you couldn't say this is a positive if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan. Jeff?
Well, look, I think the big thing, like Eric brought up the whole thing about the counsel he's getting. Look, I think what he's done is he's tabled all this stuff until next offseason. I think somebody just said that in the comments. Like he's lowered the talk for now, lowered the noise level for now, but at some point it will be back. But he's always been a smart guy. He's always been a guy who understands how to learn quickly. And so my sense of it is that he learned quickly that the best chance he has to make more money is to play well this season, put things on tape that he wasn't putting on tape last year. I don't completely buy into the whole thing about I want to be a Chiefs for life. If somebody comes in, if he's a free agent, somebody offers him more money, he's taking the money. But I do believe that he probably has learned a valuable lesson about playing this kind of game when you don't have a serious game. And so it's really important that he is able to play at a high level. I, for one, don't think he can play at a higher level than what he showed last year. But again, I think the fact that he showed up, did not push this, did not stay unreasonable about this, it is a very good sign.
Is it a good sign, Eric, that a contract gets done last year? I agree with what Jeff said. Maybe tweak it just a little bit. I don't think he can play a lot better than he played this year. I mean, I think he can always get in better physical condition. He's still in his mid-20s. I think there's upside there. Not a lot, right? Not a lot of ceiling. He's pretty much what he's going to be. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite left tackle. He just doesn't have that kind of quick twitch ability. But I think he can get a little bit better. I'm basically lockstep, 95% with what Jeff's saying. But if the man recognizes, this is what I've said all along about his agent. I'll go back to what we said last time we did RedGold&Bold. If the agent is coming in saying, listen, just sit out camp, don't get hurt, I'll get you the deal, I can get you Trent Williams money, that's a guy that's just blowing smoke up his ass. Let's be honest, right? If the agent came in and said, here's the deal, you want to miss a few days early in camp, fine, but you get your butt in camp, you have a great season, be in shape, have a monster year, then we can go get you Trent Williams-like money, right? Or in the ballpark, or maybe more guarantees, or a deal that maybe doesn't look as good but has quality dollars. I can't do it this year when they hold you for 2 years. It can't be done. So you have to have a big season. That was my view of it. This is the first step in doing that, getting in camp and plenty of time to showcase yourself. I can't see how this in any way, shape, or form could be viewed as a negative. And I certainly think it means that at least he gets it, right? He at least gets what's at stake here, and he's not just trying to get out of practice.
Yeah. So your first question was, do you think that him not signing the deal after the trade was good? For the Chiefs, it has to be, right? It has to be a positive that I personally believe that if they would have signed him after the trade, they would have still figured out a way to like sort of go about this offseason the same way that they did. But not having signed him after the trade makes that a lot easier. But you're right. I mean, right now, Orlando Brown kind of is who he is. And I think that the only way that it hurts their long-term prospects as a pair, the Chiefs and him, is the fact that he asked for what he asked for this offseason. So that's kind of where I have an issue where it's like, it might just not work out, right? It might just not work out. It might be one of those things where he asked for too much. They insulted him too much. And unless he changes agents, which is very possible, we've seen that a number of times in the NFL before, it's just not going to work between those two. But that doesn't mean that they can't work together constructively. $16 million is a lot of money. It's life-changing money for anybody. And Orlando Brown's a plenty good of a left tackle to win a Super Bowl in the AFC. So it's a good marriage now. It works out the way that they wanted to. The folks blowing this up and saying like, and again, and I know you said this on your show, Petro, the edge goes to folks who break social norms. There was the social norm that you always sign a guy after one of these trades, and the Chiefs broke that. And funny, everything's fine because Orlando Brown has to play football to get paid for playing football. And we're all okay, and nothing bad happened. And, this team is going to still be very strong.
Let me ask you guys this. Like, at what point do you think they will have gotten the value they needed to get out of him as a player? Because for me, if they get 2 solid years out of him, and that allows them time to go out and find somebody they think is better, which I still think is part of this conversation, that he may be part of this team right now, but they're still certainly probably looking around and say, well, is there a better option out there someplace else until he's totally locked in to a long-term deal? I feel like if they get 2 years out of him and he's whatever, makes a Pro Bowl twice and is a solid player, anything else that happens after that is gravy.
Well, in fact, Jeff, I think it's actually even further than what you're saying. I think if they get 2 years of Pro Bowl, let's say 6 out of 10 tackle play out of him at the price that they paid him at,
yep,
it's already worth it. And going back in to buy more of those seasons at what is going to be a significant raise is going too far, right? It's not leaving the table while you're ahead in Vegas or, there are plenty of casinos near you right now, Jeff, in Indianapolis that you could also go to. But like it's I even think it's further on. It's like the Chiefs should be patting themselves on the back for getting the value out of Orlando Brown, where plenty of people, didn't like the trade. Yeah. The worry is that they might pat themselves on the back for that trade and go further in. Now, this offseason's evidence that that isn't an absolute, and that isn't a 100% probability. In fact, I would put it as a coin flip that they end up overpaying Orlando Brown, which maybe makes it a coin flip that they pay him at all.
Isn't that the moral of the story though, right? Like everybody else said, as you put it, well, you make the trade, you got to sign it. You got to get it done. And we've seen teams do that. We've seen the Chiefs do it as well. Justin Houston had 22 sacks, so you have to give him more than J.J. Watt. Was he better than J.J. Watt? No. But you have to give it to him. It's just what you have to do, and they did it. Eric Berry's the top free agent safety. You have to give him the money. Yeah, but is he worth that money? No, but you have to do it, so they did it, right? Like I think this is a significant moment for the Chiefs, and certainly signals of, we've talked about it a lot, them changing gears and moving forward and understanding the big pieces, Patrick Mahomes, and after that, everybody else take a number, right? You can play on this team if you fit for the right number. But this isn't, a team that has, as we talked about in our 2D podcast, Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, or, take your pick on any number of quarterbacks that are out there. Kirk Cousins, who else? Who else are some of the good ones? Tua Tagovailoa, on and on. Ryan Tannehill. All these quarterbacks that are good and they deserve a pretty big paycheck, but you still feel like we got to be exceptional everywhere around them, right? There are only a couple of teams. The Packers are one. Everyone's screaming about them not having the wideouts. Let's see if they go 14-3 without Devontae Adams, and everybody will have a new message. And we've talked about that. Guys seem to leave the Packers and leave Aaron Rodgers, and they're not near as good, right? Like that idea that you have to sign him, that's true if you're trying to, put the square peg into the round hole with a lesser quarterback. But when you have the guy, you just need to be good and efficient and all your signings around them, and you'll be in the game to win a championship. And I think this is them putting their money where their mouth is, and it's them proving, like, all the people, all the noise that was out there, be it NFL pundits or fans who just kept going on and on, you have to pay Orlando Brown. Not only did they not pay him, he's in camp. And he's in camp long before the first preseason game. So stop with this narrative that somehow the player has all the cards. I mean, listen, he could have played this outside and demanded a trade, to which I think the Chiefs would have been like, we can't really get much for you. Why would we do it? I mean, I think to Jeff's point, the Chiefs have it nailed. He's either going to, because I go back, and I thought Jeff had a great view of this from the day he came in when he said, and Eric, you too, because you even piled on and said, listen, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because how good's he going to be? If he's really good, you got to pay him. If he sucks, then you're what, cutting him and you have nothing to show for him? Instead, he kind of threaded that needle of being pretty good. And here they sit, and it looked like, okay, the Chiefs were going to be in a bad spot. Well, now they said either he plays great, which I think both Jeff, you and I, and Eric, all of us would agree that's probably impossible, or he plays pretty good and they can sit, which is like what he did last year, maybe a little bit better. And then you look at what the market is. Does the market really dictate? I was hearing that, he wants Stanley-like guarantees. He wants $68 million guaranteed, which would basically make him a no cut for 3 years. Yeah. And, the Chiefs didn't have to give him more. They owned his rights for 2 years. So they didn't have to give him more. Will he play at a level that warrants that? You can say, okay. I will say this, in the man's defense, coming in shape, Jeff, it gives me more confidence in giving a guy multiple years that he took this offseason the way he needed to take it, and he's at least, conditioning-wise in shape as he comes into camp.
Yeah, no, it does. Look, he was taking care of business, and I'm sure this is where Jamal Brown, the former Saints offensive tackle, he probably had a lot to do with that, making sure that he didn't sit around feeling good about himself, thinking this deal was going to come down, because he's on notice. I mean, he's always auditioning. And to the point you made about what I said, Eric said last year, they made the best of a bad situation last year. They did the same thing this time around. They made the best of a bad situation, which was that they had a guy who had an inflated value of himself, who wanted a lot of money, and they needed somebody to play left tackle, and they played it to a way that he obviously comes in motivated. He obviously comes in, it's rare you have teams that can literally insult somebody 2 years in a row with their contract offers or lack thereof, and still find a guy coming in talking about, I want to be a part of this franchise as long as I can. Yeah. And somehow they played the Jedi mind trick on the guy, and he hasn't allowed it to become an issue, which goes back to, I think, a point I made, a few podcasts back, where I said, I don't know if he's built to do the kind of stuff that Le'Veon Bell did, that other players have done in this league when they've tried to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm not playing what Trent Williams did in Washington. I think he's more grounded, more sensitive, and it does bother him when people feel like he's not living up to their expectations. Yeah,
I think that's a fair point. And, I do think he's doing what he needs to do to try to get the contract, right? He's clearly playing hooky from school, and this gives the Chiefs their best chance to have their best offensive line is to have him in there at left tackle now. Everybody else fits in their spot, and they can move forward. So Chiefs get good news with Orlando Brown in, plenty of time to get him ready. I even heard some people kind of whispering that, Andy Reid, this was kind of Andy Reid's deadline too, right? Mm-hmm. Like when the pads come on, you better be here. You want to screw around on the other stuff, fine. But no minicamp OTAs, okay, you kind of have that right. But now's the time to be in it. So it looks like to keep his quarterback happy, to keep his coach happy, he's in. I think that's a good sign. Carlos Dunlap is a Kansas City Chief. Eric, we've talked a lot about him before. I do think one thing's interesting. Should we point out the dynamic that's at play here with his agent? I mean, didn't it take a significant leap for Drew Rosenhaus to sign Carlos Dunlap with the Kansas City Chiefs when they had done so much to sabotage the numbers of Tyreek Hill, at least according to episode 1 of Tyreek Hill's podcast. If an organization will try to stunt the statistical growth of a player in an effort to keep his value down, I mean, man, he got over that fast with Dunlap. Did he not, Eric?
He did. And by the way, Aaron, I believe, who remarked that he's surprised that we did this on a Tuesday. I'm happy to report that we are going to be doing it regularly Tuesday, Thursday, relatively soon, so you no longer have to be surprised. But as he also remarked, you two guys are on the road. I just moved into a new office, so we are a little transient here, but we still have fun. Additionally,
PTI style.
You guys all made fun of.
Yeah. I agree. Let's do. Where was it? Because he had a great description of what it was.
2 hotel rooms and a dormitory stairway was the comment.
I think that's where it was. I thought that was fantastic.
I think it's the third from the bottom.
There we go. Broadcasting from 2 hotel rooms and 1 dormitory stairwell. First of all,
I gotta say though, last week, even though I had a couple of red wines, I did remember Carlos Dunlap's statistics enough to spout them off on air. It is interesting. They did get a great deal with Dunlap. I mean, you're talking about a $3 million 1-year deal. I mean, this is less than what they got for Melvin Ingram on like a prorated basis last year. And Carlos Dunlap has been much more productive than Melvin Ingram, both from a pressures perspective as well as a sacks perspective. I mean, he's been involved in 18 sacks the last 2 years for a Seattle defense that isn't very good, folks. Like you're not talking about like the Legion of Boom giving the defensive line a second or 2 more. We're talking about one of the worst secondaries in all of football, and Dunlap is still being productive as a part of that. So this is a really good addition to the Chiefs. And I think it gives them some flexibility too, because you basically need 2 out of 3 to go right. You need Karlaftis, Dunlap, and Clark. And in reality, like all 3 have like something going for them, right? Dunlap is good. Like he has that going for him. Is like he's actually a good NFL player. He's a little older, but pass rushers, after you get past a certain age, like they all tend to perform okay because it's a craft at that point. Karlaftis is a first-round rookie that like is trying to impress, so obviously like that is an extra motivation. And what we talked about at the jump, Frank Clark is like super motivated to keep his career going because he's a bad season away from his career being over. And so this signing to me for the Chiefs, they're just throwing numbers at the position, but they're throwing good numbers at the position again. Right. What's another $3 million for this team? Right? Well, what it does is it significantly reduces the chance that they can't get a pass rush. And I know Sam McDowell was talking about this on your show, Soren. He's a guy that can finish pressures, right? The Chiefs got pressure on the QB last year. Not a great rate, not one of the best in football, but they got pressure on the QB. They just couldn't finish. At least Dunlap can finish pressures now.
Yeah. There's no doubt that they're a better team with Dunlap than without, right, Jeff?
Yeah. I mean, look, they had to do something. I feel like we all, even the people who are watching the show right now, were under the belief that something would have happened much earlier along these lines. That when you talk about the defensive line and improving it in the offseason the way Brett Veach did, that you would have had, some kind of bigger name aside from George Karlaftis by the time we got to this stage. So I applaud them. It sounded as if Dunlap was shopping himself. Given what he signed for, he probably wasn't happy with what he was hearing from other places. And I do feel like, as Eric said, this is more – if you see it as they just got whatever, a poor man's J.J. Watt to walk in here, that's a mistake. I think that they are seeing this as a part of a puzzle, and that when they've had some great defensive linemen here, some great pass rushers in the last few years, and that I believe this defense is going to be more about what the secondary does. It's more about confusion. It's more about mixing up coverages, and more about allowing these guys up front to be able to make plays that way. That all these guys, while they all have their own skill sets, their own strengths, you also have their own weaknesses. I mean, Carlos Dunlap is still 33 years old. But I think if you were able to mix him in, if you're able to get the best of him, mixing in with the best of George Karlaftis, with the best of Frank Clark, and Chris Jones plays like a monster, plays closer to Aaron Donald level, which he should be doing week in and week out. I like the mix. I did not like the depth behind this bunch is not great. We know Frank Clark has had moments during the season when he's been either ill with some kind of stomach issue or just hurt, or as he said, he was overweight last year. We know that it's hard for some rookies to come in and play and have impact right away. And I think Karlaftis is going to have some growing pains. So just to have one more person who come in here and give you what Melvin Ingram gave you last year. And I know, Soren, you're not crazy about getting too much hype to what he did, but he brought juice. And he brought enough juice that it helped those guys play at a high level. If Dunlap does that, then it's a success.
Well, a couple things. One, Irish Mac agrees. I'm not ready to anoint Karlaftis yet. I need to see the kid play and see some downs and see him stay healthy. I mean, I think we'd all agree with that, right? Although the early returns are, the bull rush is effective. I don't think that he's not Derek Thomas, right? I've said along my comp is my hope. My hope is that he's Tamba Hali as a defensive end. I think that's the thing that I'm most hopeful of. But, for me, I listen, 9.5 sacks is what Von Miller had last year, right? And he got what, $100+ million? 9.5 sacks. He's 33 years old this year. Dunlap's 33 years old and had 8.5 sacks. They got him on a 1-year deal. Now the Bills are at a different spot. They're the Chiefs in 2019. They've never won a Super Bowl ever, right? In their entire franchise history. Been 50 years for the Chiefs. They're in that whatever it takes, we have to do it. Damn be the future. Let's get it done right now. So I respect what the Bills did. I'm not crapping on what the Bills did, but the big picture long game is the Dunlap signing is immensely in the cap room that it's going to take an immensely, would you agree, Jeff, better signing? Like if you look at it when you consider how much do you think, how much dead money is going to be on the cap for Von Miller when it's all said and done? A guy who, didn't play at all in 2020, did play 15 games last year. He is an elite level athlete. Elite athletes age better. But, don't you think that there's going to be a lot on the back end of the deal the Bills signed that they're going to be wanting? And if you've already got that Super Bowl in your pocket, better to be making the moves that aren't going to cripple you in the future.
Well, look, the Rams are going to have a hellacious, time about 2-3 years from now when all those financial moves come due. But nobody's going to care because they got a Lombardi trophy. If all that stuff leads to a championship in Buffalo, then it's a great thing. Yeah, if you're asking me, do I think the Chiefs should have gone out there and gone crazy and spent a bunch of money on a pass rushing market, free agent market that was filled with a lot of guys like Carlos Dunlap who were over the hill but still productive? Yeah, I think that it's better to sit back and try to figure out how you can minimize the damage to your cap. They could have gone after Chandler Jones, could have gone after Von Miller. I mean, they didn't have the money to do it, but they could have probably done some financial gymnastics to try to make it happen. But yeah, they played it smart. Hopefully, and really part of this too is I think to help take some pressure off Karlaftis. I remember Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah was talking about going out and signing the guy from Green Bay, Darius Smith, and he said, part of it's to have insurance in case Danielle Hunter can't stay healthy, but it's also good when you're trying to get some young pass rushers to learn how to play in this league, to have some veteran guys around them. And so the more veteran guys you can have around a young guy, the more it can help that young player evolve faster. So I think this is probably part of the play as well.
I will say this, $5.5 million or $5.15 million cap hit this year from Von Miller. The Chiefs could have fit that in for sure. Dunlap's going to count more. So you could do it. It's just about what you're setting yourself up on the back end. And again, I'm not, for anyone who's a Bills fan, I'm not crapping on the Bills. They're in a different spot, right? But who are you betting on 3 years from now to be in a better position to win championships? The Bills or the Chiefs? Because I'm betting on the Chiefs.
But that's the whole point, right? So Jeff just said the Rams don't care, and I agree with that. But you know what the Rams tried to do? They tried to win one Super Bowl, right? And they got to the window. I think we'd all be surprised if they won again. Not to say that they can't, right? The Bills have changed their strat, right? So the Bills in the front seven had no players until recent contracts who made more top 20 money at any of those positions, right? They were building a thing to win multiple Super Bowls. And unfortunately, and this is what happens, and if you're a Chiefs fan, which a lot of folks that listen to the show, you got to thank God for 2019, right? You just because otherwise you're in what the Bills did, right? Because the Chiefs moves, and this is the difference. This is what a Dunlap move versus a Von Miller move is. The Chiefs made a move to win multiple Super Bowls. The Bills are making moves to win one Super Bowl. And I get it, right? If you have not won one Super Bowl, you should make your moves to win one Super Bowl. But it's not even Von Miller. When you look at the cap hit for Diggs, it's 11.7 this year, right? Which we can all fit under that cap. Then it's 20.2. Then it becomes 26.5 and $25 million dead to cut, right? That's the Diggs. And we all believe Diggs is amazing, right? There's nothing wrong with Stephon Diggs. It's just, at some point in time, having those, and Jason Fitzgerald does such a really good job of pointing this out. It's not that you can't play games, right, with these contracts. It's the restructures mean that those players are on your roster. Michael Thomas is on the Saints no matter what. Yeah. Stephon Diggs is on the Saints for the next Stephon Diggs is on the Bills for a long time, no matter whether or not he's good or bad, right? Carlos Dunlap is on the Chiefs until he's not on the Chiefs anymore, right? And there isn't a player on this roster, save Patrick Mahomes and Joe Tooney. There's a couple guys. But there aren't any players on the Chiefs roster that they can't be look, you're not useful anymore. You're gone, right? There's one player, and it's the quarterback, and it's got to be that way for things to make sense. But that is it's the difference. The Chiefs are trying to win multiple Super Bowls. The Bills are trying to win exactly one.
I think to your point, first of all, by the way, the Rams. When we talk about the Rams, no one's going to remember it. I agree till about 3 years from now, right? The championship counts, but it doesn't count for 50 years, right? There's a point where people start to say, hey, what's up? The Rams this year cap, they have $8 million worth of cap room right now. Next year, already $250 million against the cap, 24, 247. So the next 2 years, they're going to have to get creative. Right now, they've done a great job of finding the mortar guys, all these fourth-round picks to find the guys to fill in around the stars. And I think they'll do a pretty good job of doing it. I don't think the Rams are going to fall off a cliff, but it's not the most, advantageous position to put yourself in. But to your point about where the Chiefs find themselves, cap-wise, where they are right now next year, they're at 250. Hang on, this is the Rams. Hold on, I'm trying to get to the come on. We'll do a different team here. Hang on. I'm frozen because I'm on an iPad. My bad. But to your point about who is still expensive, I think the only guy that the Chiefs are upside down on, because Travis Kelce, they're not even upside down on, right? I think the only guy they're upside down on after this year is Patrick Mahomes. Now, an Orlando Brown deal would change that, but I think this is the last year for Joe Tooney, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see here. Multi-year. Tooney is.
I had 3 before he.
Is he go that far in?
I thought it was
22 million next year.
By the way, part of that is how they set themselves up. Part of that was they had almost no one under contract next year.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why
and Jeff's right. Joe Tooney, 22 against the cap next year, 35 to cut. So they're into Joe Tooney through 23.
Yeah, and
which is pretty standard at 3 years. What you're going to be, but that's really it. So they're in a much more flexible position to maneuver. Orlando Brown's going to change that if he signs a multi-year deal next year. It'll be a different setup there. But Chris Jones becomes cheaper to cut than keep next year. This is really a contract year for Chris Jones. Juju Smith-Schuster's on a one-year deal. Dunlap's on a one-year deal. Yeah, they look like they get into a much more flexible position after this season.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, I don't know if we're talking about Buffalo right now, where they're going to be. I think the Chiefs' competition 2-3 years down the road is going to be the Bengals. It's going to be, depending on what happens with Tua, the Dolphins, if they draft a young guy next year and keep their quarterback situation, pretty fairly cost friendly. The Steelers are in great cap situation. Kenny Pickett hits, and they're able to get off and running with a young team there. So the competition from them, and what I'm making about Buffalo is that, yeah, you have to go get it now, but if you're going to always be chasing some kind of dynasty type dream, that's hard to pull off. I think if you're able to get a championship, if you're able to get 1, you're doing pretty well. You get 2, you're through the roof.
It's hard to pull off, but isn't it the plan after you get the first one?
Yeah, I mean, I think they look at obviously they look at having Mahomes as being a reason to think about getting as many championships as you can while he's playing. But every team, the Bills are going to be in that same situation. The Chargers are going to be there. The Bengals are going to be there. At some point, you got to start rolling over your roster. You got to hit on these guys, these young guys. So really, the proof in the pudding for the Chiefs down the road is going to be how well does McDuffie play? How well does Karlaftis play? How well does Skyy Moore play? Who else can they find a left tackle who is comparable to Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith? Those are the things that are going to matter. Can they find another tight end like Travis Kelce?
Yeah. Let's talk about Skyy Moore. The reports are good when he plays, but he missed a lot of time in minicamp because of a hamstring. Now comes up limping after some kind of hip injury. Word is he's okay. That was the word yesterday. Yesterday's scare was that Patrick Mahomes was in the injury tent. Came out today, taped up foot, taped up ankle. He says it was foot, not ankle. Got stepped on, but he was in practice, so that looks to be legit. We'll see if Skyy Moore's running around a full participant in tomorrow's practice. But at what point, Eric, do you get a little bit nervous that Skyy Moore is struggling to get through practices?
Yeah, I mean, the thing, the double-edged sword with him is the fact that you see him making these highlight reel catches all over practice. And, reports are that it's not just, they're not just, the only plays he makes. Like, he's extremely impressive out there, but you see him hit the ground a lot. You see him do things. You look at his frame and you're like, that's a small player. I know he's got thick legs and stuff like that, but he's a small player, right? And you see, and I'm like, gosh, like that looks like a collarbone injury half the time he dives for the ball and stuff. So you do have to be worried. He missed time already this offseason. When you look at his time in the MAC, he was relatively durable there. I got to look and make sure, we didn't get huge injury flags on him, when he was at Western Michigan. You look at his snaps per year, he did have a 2020 season. Now, he didn't have as many snaps in 2020 as 19 and 21, but I believe that's because the MAC only played a 5-game season. So he's been basically healthy enough to play all the snaps available to him the last 3 years there. Now, that doesn't – if a guy's healthy in college, that doesn't mean he'll stay healthy in the pros. But he did pass, sort of all the tests the Chiefs had as far as medicals and stuff like that. So I'm not more worried about him than I otherwise would be, but there is like the frame issue, and there is obviously the fact that he's been with the Chiefs for just a few months and he's already sustained a couple injuries.
Yeah, look, it worries me because he hadn't been here very long, and those kinds of issues that he's had, especially the hamstrings, those are always a concern with a young receiver, especially because some guys, it never goes away. And we know a guy who was here, a couple of years ago where it never seemed to go away, and it plagued him throughout his career in Sammy Watkins. But in being up there and watching the kid, yeah, he's special. He certainly is. The movement, the quickness, the body control. I was talking to Eric Bieniemy about him, and he was super excited about him and talked about just how much of a baller he is already. They really haven't had that kind of. They've played receivers in the slot, but they haven't had that kind of guy who looks like the prototypical slot guy. I know he can move around, do some different things, but he had a couple catches when I was out there. One was, like I said, it's rare to see Mahomes underthrow somebody on a deep pass. It happened on a play, and he tried to kind of fit it in over a safety who was covering more, and Moore came back and dove and caught it. And he had another play running kind of a wheel route and went up, made a great play. And so the acrobatics are there. And he certainly is a lot more polished at this stage of his career than Tyreek Hill was, than obviously McCole Hardman was. And so that they should be excited about him. If he can stay healthy, he could be an amazing addition to this offense.
Yeah, that's the big key right now. Like, is there any evidence of the MAC not being able to stand up, right? Is there like smaller conference, it's much more of a gamble health-wise, Eric, because you're playing against smaller athletes in the MAC and those kind of things? Is there any kind of data that points to that should be a little bit of a reason why teams maybe are cautious with the, I know it's not 1AA football, right? And nobody played more physical than Kareem Hunt, who played in the MAC, and that had no problem carrying over into the NFL. But is there any evidence to that the analytics say be careful when you go to the smaller schools?
I mean, injuries are pretty difficult to compute from 1 year because you also have the survivorship bias of the players that actually make it to the NFL were healthier in college, than those that didn't. So it's a tricky problem. So far, I haven't found any evidence there. But college injury data, by the way, is one of the sketchiest things. As anybody who's trying to bet college football or play DFS, like the reports are just not reliable enough anyway. So. It's not something I've been able to show or prove. But I do think the fact that he's small and he was able to be kind of an everything to everyone wide receiver while being small in the MAC, I think increases my worry just a little bit.
Jeff, reports are that Frank Clark is quicker. Word is he cut out red meat. He cut out alcohol. I've talked to some folks that have been watching practice, and I've seen some of the videos that are going around. I'll be up in St. Joe next week, so I haven't laid eyes on him personally myself. But the vibe that he is, it's a contract year, as we said. They basically are paying him what it would take to, cut him and take that same cap hit. It's still good money for him, but if he wants to make a big check next year, he's got to have a big year. The contract year is undefeated, phrase that gets thrown around a lot. Is that what we're seeing here? And do you buy that we're going to see a significantly better version of Frank Clark than what we saw last year?
Well, it's going to be a more boring version if you're not eating red meat or drinking. That's a long off season for a football player. God, Lord. Look, I applaud Frank Clark.
So wait a minute.
By the way, I love the Quick Trip cup, Petro.
It made the trip.
Clark has had how many Quick Trip cups this offseason? 1, 0?
I need a big cup to bring to fill my tea. Milo.
It's so big you can't get in the whole camera in the frame. Yeah. It's in the whole frame.
Yeah, it's not. There's no Quick Trips down here in Florida. I got to figure out which way to go. So it obviously made the trip up from home. It's part of it. It's got my Milo's tea in it. So the Milo's folks can come on board. We're ready to take your sponsorship. But suffice it to say, though, Jeff Chadiha did not go without red meat and alcohol this past offseason. Is that what you're saying, Jeff?
I didn't go without it tonight. I had a big old steak when I got into India and a couple Jack and Cokes. Yeah. Try to hit Eager's threshold tonight. I couldn't quite get there.
Good time.
But look, I appreciate Frank Clark's candor and his self-awareness. And look, we know he's trying to keep his job and keep his money. But I think, look, he's looked faster, he looks quicker, he looks slimmer. I can appreciate a guy who last offseason was in all kinds of trouble with the guns. I don't even know where that case is at now. Out in LA, a lot of things weighing on him. And look, he went back home, figured out that he still likes playing football, playing for the Chiefs, and wants to do it as long as possible, likes making $25 million. And so he found motivation and he's putting it in. He's trying to be the best version of himself. Now, just as with Orlando Brown, I think he can't play at a higher level than what we've seen. And I think a lot of Frank Clark's success, why I like him, I like his energy and his hustle, has to do with playing with other great defensive linemen or on great defenses. And so I think Frank Clark will be a better player if Chris Jones is playing better. I think Frank Clark will be a better player if Karlaftis is playing at a high level. I'm not just sold on the idea that because he lost weight and didn't drink and whatever, ate chicken and tofu all off season, that he's gonna turn around now.
All right, I love this. I love the difference in opinions. I like that Joshua says that, by the way, if you're catching us via the podcast later on, we stream live and we're back starting this week and every week with Red Gold and Bold every Tuesday. And then our Two Deep every Thursday starting next week. But Josh said, and so you can catch us on the stream on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. But Josh said, I like what Frank Clark had to say in the presser the other day. Seemed like he's in a good place, if nothing else. Karlaftis is sponging his mentorship for what that is worth. The flip side is Irish Mac. Frank Clark is a hot mess. This sounds like some special interest story crap Karen Kornacki would have fed us before a Monday Night Football game in the 90s. Hey.
Hey, stop talking about my friend Steve like that, okay?
Yeah, you're not gonna find a nicer person than Karen Kornacki. That's number one.
Yes.
But the point is, I get where both sides are coming at, right? Like Is this just lip service and it sounds good? And listen, camp gets pretty boring pretty quick when you're covering it and trying to find storylines. We shouldn't already be at that, but I mean, he did say it, and it's worth reporting. And so, but like, yeah, I don't. Here's my thought on it. Is he a speed rusher, or is he just go forward?
Yeah.
And hopefully you're either faster or stronger than the other guy. So I do worry that whatever he gained in speed, he gave up in power. I don't see a Dwight Freeney spin move. I don't see, a Derek Thomas just beat the rush, a Jared Allen hold him off with one arm. And
Frank Clark is a poor man's Tom Mahaly.
Yeah. And so I don't know that that's better. Is it, Eric?
It's better for him to be in shape than to not be in shape. We all watched the Buffalo game where he's huffing him. I mean, he looked like me and Petro out there trying to chase the quarterback around when Josh Allen was coming back on the Chiefs. So, I'd rather have him in shape. But I think your point's a good one, Petro. He's not a speed rusher. He doesn't have great moves. He was an out of shape bull rusher. And maybe he can't carry that weight. Maybe it's not tenable for him to do that for how long he wants to. I will say this. I think having Dunlap in means that he doesn't have to play 70 snaps, right? Because I think that's where it gets out of control, right? The first year, he's got the 2 elbow braces on because he can't bend his arms, and he's just worn out because he's the only freaking edge defender on that team that can do anything. And then, the last couple years, it was the same thing. I mean, they had to remember that this time last year, we're talking about Chris Jones playing defensive end. Now they got 2 options of guys who might be able to play. And if Frank Clark only has to play 30 snaps a game, I think he can make it work. But I think your point is valid. He looks skinny. And when he was that Twitter thing of him walking through, he looked lean. And again, you need you need to get off the ball quick, or you need to have some speed moves, which I haven't seen in 2 years.
Yeah. And listen, I do think the Dunlap part is big. I think Chris Jones all the time at D tackle is big. If you get 7, 7, and 7 from the top three defensive ends,
that's 21.
It's 21. Chris Jones.
How about that, Eric?
12.
Love that.
33. You sprinkle in the odds and ends here, and all of a sudden you're over 40 sacks, and it's starting to look better. I can see a path there, but I'm not. I'd like hearing that he's in shape, but I'm not sold on just being leaner is better for Frank Clark. Travis Kelce is getting an extra $3 million, Jeff. And I think if you look at it, and I don't know that all the details are out, but it's looking like it's $1 million in base salary, and then he's got a bonus that was $44,000 a game per game, being active, an active bonus clause in his contract that now goes to $121,000, right? Or maybe it's 150. I think it went up $120,000 per game. So if he plays all 17 games, he's up another $2 million and change, right? So he gets $3 million more. I think those will be considered likely to be earned. Hence the reporting that he gets a $3 million raise, because they're going to have to count that against the cap because he usually plays all the games. So they're going to be likely to be earned. How significant is this? We heard Travis Kelce really go to the podium and talk about how he wants to be a Chief. He wants to finish being a Chief. He seemed very appreciative of this. Was this something that had to be done with him, or is this just a cookie before something bigger comes for a 33-year-old tight end that he's looking around saying, "Whoa, where's mine?"
It's weird because I saw this more as what happens when Patrick Mahomes is the 11th highest paid quarterback in the NFL type moment. Because if they're willing to do that for Kelce at this point, at this stage, whether it's I'm sure it wasn't unprompted. I'm sure his agent said, "Look, this guy's playing out of his mind and done things no tight end's ever done before. He needs a little more money." I think he deserves. Well, I think he deserves it. He deserves whatever he gets. He's been a phenomenal player. He's grown up in this franchise. He's done great things, helped them win a championship. But I also do look down the road and say, as much as we are celebrating the deal Mahomes took a couple of years ago when he signed his long-term extension, that I never thought that deal was going to go 10 years. And that I'm even more certain now, the way money's getting thrown around, that 2 or 3 years down the road, they're going to have to look at that and think about what he needs to get paid. So for me, it was more of a precursor to that moment than it was anything about Travis Kelce.
Yeah. Eric, your reaction to $3 million for Kelce, and the subsequent comments that he made and talking about his passion for the Chiefs and wanting to be with the Chiefs. What did you make of it all?
It's the benefit of having flexibility, right? I mean, so you get the Dunlap thing, you get the Kelce thing. I mean, these are just, these are just appreciated moves. I also know there were some grumblings, right? Like, I think that it's just an emblematic move of where the Chiefs are. I mean, remember 2 years ago, they were like $76 under the cap at one point in the offseason, and these aren't possible. Like, all these things matter, I think, to a team that's trying to win, and they're trying to keep this thing together, and you have extra cash on board. And they're basically saying, look, if we can make one of the best players on our team marginally happier, then that's worth a lot more than like a backup offensive lineman in the middle of the season.
You should give a cut to George Kittle. Wasn't Kittle the one who brought it up a couple of months ago? Yeah,
it said pay this guy, give him his money. But how about the fact that, Eric, you're the guy that's hit us with the speed, that his speed has dropped precipitously each year for 3 or 4 years. Is this them just getting the number? Like I said, is there another raise coming? Because if it's just moving money from the back end to the front end, okay, it's a thank you, it's an attaboy. What is it, the precursor to them seeing that the end is near, right? Like, there's a couple more years, and then we need to have a guy who's his equal or better, and we don't need to have a $14 million cap hit on a guy who's not going to be a number one tight end anymore. Is this what they're saying by taking that money from the back end and putting it in here? By the way, the reports are very good about the way he's playing here at camp. But like I said, the data says he's slowing down every year.
Yeah, look, I think this is paying as you go, right? Like, you don't want to be paying players for who they were. And I think a contract extension on Kelce is paying him for who he was at this point. Even though tight ends are relatively inexpensive, he has still been productive. But if you look at his statistics last year, they weren't quite as good, right? His speed has gone down. He wins differently now than he used to. So, I just think this is sound stuff, right? Like, if you have the money, you make him happy. You borrow. You're not even borrowing from the future so much as you're just saying, like, look, I'm moving. Like, they're making their situation in the future better, right? Like, you don't have any of these sort of like negative, feelings towards each other, and those are all good things. And they have the money. Like, I think that's like the big point. And what better way to spend it than to make one of the best players in franchise history happy? And you're not doing it by mortgaging the future. Like, other teams would say, hey, like, let's give, the Vikings did this with like Harrison Smith, right? Where they're like, Harrison Smith's one of the best players in franchise history, and he's unhappy. He's starting to see the safety market move, right? That's what happened last summer. And Rick Spielman gave Harrison Smith what is now kind of a ball and chain contract, right? And you get sentimental with these players, and it screws you over, right? Like, this is not what the Chiefs did, right? The Chiefs said, Kelce can see sort of the market the way it goes, and he doesn't want the moon. He just wants to be, compensated fairly, and then they compensate him fairly.
Yeah. My question really, Jeff, is at 35 years old, is he done? And are they getting ready for that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I've said this before, and I love Travis. I just think the way he plays, the body type, the reliance on athleticism, I think once that you start losing that, I don't see him being like Jason Witten out there catching 8-yard passes at 38 years old. I don't see him doing what Tony Gonzalez did. I didn't see him like doing what Gronk's done. I just feel like once he loses the speed, he becomes a different player, and he can't compensate for that. He's always been a bigger wide receiver. And so, I think that, and that's why I've always said, as much as I like the guy, I don't see him being the best tight end in football when he finishes, because I don't see him playing long enough to put up that kind of production. And I think the Chiefs know that too.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is running with the ones. Should he be, Jeff?
Yeah. I mean, look, when I was out there, I saw a lot of Isaiah Pacheco doing some stuff with the ones. So I think they're trying to get a few bodies in there. But look, they want Clyde to succeed. I think it's very clear that Travis talked about mentoring him. These players, when he's had his struggles, had his fumbles last year, they were all rallying around him. It's clear that the guy is very well liked, very well respected. and they want to give him every chance to live up to the promise and the hope that they had for him as a player coming in. And so I root for the guy. I hate to see young guys coming, getting banged up, being injured. They have to make a decision about him sooner or later, about what happened with that fifth-year option. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea to get him in the ones and see what he can do and build his confidence up.
If he's a stock, are you buying or selling Clyde Edwards-Helaire stock, Eric?
Remember when we said on this podcast, by the way, our mouths to God's or Brett Veach's ear, by the way, in these situations. Remember when we said a good running back is going to get cut from this roster, right? Like, it's not going to be Clyde, but I'm selling Clyde stock, not because I think he sucks, but I just think there's a lot of good running backs on this roster. Like, Ronald Jones is probably pretty good. Clyde's good, right? Isaiah Pacheco's good. Jerrion Ely is a good undrafted rookie that probably will make the practice squad. Jerick McKinnon's good. One of those guys, Derek Orr, two of those guys are going to get cut, right? And so, like, I just think that the depth and the breadth of this team is fairly strong at the position. So I'm selling Edwards-Helaire not because I think he sucks. I just think that this roster is full of good running backs.
Being an avid reader of both NFL.com and PFF.com, where both of you ply your trade, am I the only one that saw PFF.com call the Chiefs running back room 31st in the NFL? And now Eric is talking about, it's this fountain of talent that's going to be sprinkling on every other team out there because they can't.
We are not a monolith.
Where is the disconnect, Eric, between you and the rest of the?
We are not a monolith, Petro.
CBD kicking in.
I have not. I've had coffee, by the way.
Yeah,
Michigan.
Okay.
PFF's first college client.
No, but I mean, to your point, listen, I'm going to do it. I'll be the one guy. You heard it here first. I am buying on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think the guy's going to be healthy. I think they're going to get him the football in the passing game.
Petro, you can't buy a stock you already own.
We're taping this right now.
I could buy more. Of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Right, I was in at like 50, but now that he's selling at 22, I'm going to leverage my position, get my average cost down to like $31. Right, I'm buying on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm going to go one more time.
This Josh Gordon moment from last year.
He's not gone yet. Josh Gordon could still come around.
Is he still there?
He is still there. Right,
I'm joking. That's what I'm saying.
Unless
he looks like he's lost some weight too. By the way, Gordon.
Yeah.
No, but I will say this on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I actually do think that there is still better returns than he has shown. I think he's got ability. I think the Chiefs are going to play more downhill football, which is going to bode well for him in the running game. And I think part of the new approach to beating defenses without Tyreek Hill is going to include getting the ball to the running backs. And I think it'll be
good. Why no screen game, Clyde?
I'm 100%, Judge. I'm with you 100%.
Because they can't see him.
Yeah, that could be. That's part of the reason why he should be good in the screen game. They don't see him leaking out.
I think the Chiefs running game is going to be pretty damn good this year. Especially we come back to our first topic today. Orlando Brown being in that's what Orlando Brown does better than he pass protects. Orlando Brown being in camp, being theoretically in shape, having to answer one question about the offensive line now, namely who's going to play right tackle versus two questions, and the box counts that they negotiate. Look, there are two outcomes for the Chiefs this year. One of them is MVS, Hardman, Skyy Moore, whatever, can get those safeties and keep them too high, in which case if Andy commits to running the football, it's going to be 5-6 yards of carry. The other one is that safeties are not necessarily all that scared of the Chiefs anymore, and maybe they're not as successful running it, but I can guarantee you that's going to be some long touchdown passes to Hardman and MVS to the point, Hardman had 4 catches on deep balls last year. That's going to change if the safeties have to respect the run game. If the safeties don't respect the run game, I think Andy's going to learn the lesson from last playoffs where you just run the football and get 6 yards of carry.
Said it earlier, starting next week, which means really starting this week for Red, Gold, and Bold. We are back each and every Tuesday. We stream live at 9 o'clock. You can catch the podcast, the really later that night. Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Central. We'll be streaming live each and every week as we are back to the season. So we want to thank everybody for joining us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, wherever it is. Get the likes, the loves. They don't cost you nothing, but they help us a bunch. So if you'd smash those love buttons, like buttons, and the subscriptions, we would appreciate it greatly. So for Jeff Chadiha in Indianapolis for the NFL Network and NFL.com, Eric Eager, not in a stairwell, from his beautiful new office there at Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. My name is Soren Petro, on the road, back home in KC next week. For Red, Gold, and Bold, you can catch my work at 810WHB.com. We say thank you very much for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.